why make a play for Kirk Cousins, especially since it might have given an indication to the person with whom you're trading the idea that you might not be getting Kirk Cousins if you're knocking on his door to move up in the draft, Mike?
Well, I think, Rich, so if I can kind of go back in time a little bit. So, we do so much work in preparation for the draft. We've done quite a bit of work on this draft class and felt really good, not just on some of the higher profile quarterbacks, but other players in the draft, because really you have to almost know the pool when you're trying to make decisions about where to, again, if you make a trade and where to position yourself. But if we go back in time a little bit, I know myself and Brian Heimerdinger, my right hand. We talked a lot about that, and we talked about it with Todd and ownership, and about what our plan was. Because really, what you do is you map out pro free agency, and then you map out in the college draft to a certain degree. You don't really map out; you really analyze the college draft. You try to make sure you get your stack right, but really you put a lot of emphasis in the pro free agency. And of course, pro free agency is a way we feel at least not only to add talent, but also to, to a certain degree, fill needs and build the roster. So when we went to the pro free agency, we thought it was a unique scenario with quite frankly, Kirk Cousins being available. I think that doesn't happen very often in pro free agency. I think everybody obviously has talked about this, where a quarterback, even though he was, literally 29, 30 years old, still going into the prime of his career, and we thought played at a pretty high level. So again, it's an opportunity in that market to add a player. So we felt, hey, this doesn't happen very often. We thought it was a bit of an aberration just based on how the scenario played itself out. So we realized, hey, this is a chance to go get what we felt was a very good quarterback. Now, of course, as we're doing that, and we realized that, hey, it's pro free agency, we can obviously, players can sign wherever they want to sign, and you obviously make your offers competitive you can make it, and work within your salary cap structure and the structure of how you shape up your teams. But going into that, as we're kind of preparing ourselves in our free agency plan to go try to land Kirk Cousins, at the same time, we're also planning ahead, like, okay, what happens next? And that's where myself and Brian in particular, he was with me the whole process. We figured out, or we decided that, okay, if we don't get Kirk Cousins, the next thing to do is then to pivot in the draft, or pivot in preparation for the draft. Try to do something that's a little ahead of, a little in advance, or a little preemptive, and move up in the draft to position ourselves to, take a very good player. And of course, this was a draft with a lot of good quarterbacks in it, and we thought, as we sort of planned it, we positioned ourselves, realistically at 3. Part of it was for the compensation we did was to ideally hold on to our first-round draft pick next year. So we obviously paid a pretty good price, above market price for the pick when you look at trade charts. But, of course, when you're dealing with quarterbacks, those trade charts are kind of skewed. They kind of go out the window. We also felt if we waited longer and tried to make a trade closer to the draft, or if a player was sliding when, again, there's more suitors in play, the idea would then you'd have to pay more of a premium at that point in time. And by positioning ourselves with the third pick with what we paid for it, even though we paid a little, above market value, we thought it kind of made the ability for somebody to move ahead of us even more difficult. Now, whether or not, how that played out, that, to be determined, but we felt pretty good about that. And really, if you think back to pro free agency, when we found out we were out of, we were the second team, not the first team for Kirk Cousins, at about the same time I literally was on the road at Baker Mayfield's pro day, at Josh Rosen's pro day. And obviously done a lot of work on both those guys, Sam Darnold and Josh Allen, who had later pro days, but we'd already seen them at the combine. We felt very good about positioning ourselves at that third spot, especially when we were able to facilitate a trade that allowed us to keep our first. And with having that first going forward, obviously it's in our minds, another good piece to build with. But if we opt to hypothetically trade back in the first round, we have the ability to regain or recoup our second-round draft pick that we gave to move up in that trade. So that's really the thought process and the logic in it. And, of course, when we missed out on Kirk Cousins, it was always, you have all these contingency plans in place, and we pretty much executed what our plan was. And, we kind of pivoted and went out there, reached out to Indy. We kind of tried to figure out what we could get in terms of price and compensation and what we'd have to give up. And, we knew the Giants, we knew our impression from Cleveland was they were going to stay at 1, and it would have taken a king's ransom to try to get that pick, but they always seemed to be locked in at 1. And the Giants, we felt very strongly that they were going to, sit there at 2 in a very good position and to get a very good player. And, whether it was a quarterback they would take or trade out, or Saquon Barkley or another player, like we felt we were going to position ourselves well for, adding the player we added. I will say this, at the time, we never, we went through all the scenarios of who may be available. In regards to Sam, I think we always sort of thought or expected him to be, one of the first pick in the draft or possibly second pick. But when it played itself out that he was available, we felt very good about it. And, and we're very happy at that point in time to make that decision. But that being said, there's a lot of good players at 3 we were very comfortable with taking if it wasn't him.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.